Hey everybody, it's your boy, and today's video is going to be about the British monarchy, whether or not we as British subjects should remain loyal to it even when our interests clash, their goals are different from ours, their worldviews are different from ours, and whether or not it can actually survive after the current monarch dies, Elizabeth II, and beyond that from Charles to William, etc, etc. So first off, let's take a look at its chances of survival. It seems to me that questions are being raised the further Queen Elizabeth heads towards death, and some of them are warranted, others are not. The Queen has been, let's just say, not having the best of times recently. She's lost Prince Philip, and also she's been suffering from ill health, causing her to cancel important dates that she otherwise would have attended. And even before that, she was reducing her duties anyway because she's old. She can't do everything that she once was able to do, and she has to delegate it out to minor royals and also to the Prince of Wales, Prince Charles, who he himself is not actually that young either, but, you know, it's about time he starts acting more like a monarch, even while she's still there, because he is still the heir apparent. And also, she has been delegating tasks to William, who will be replacing Charles when he dies, and before everything went to hell, Prince Harry. So all of that is pretty natural. I think monarchs throughout history, not just in Britain, but everywhere else, have done that as they get older. That shouldn't really raise questions. However, it's the people replacing her that is the issue for some people. Many people don't like Prince Charles because of his political issues, which we can get into a little bit later on. They feel that he is unpopular compared to Elizabeth II, and him being king will cause a lot of issues in the future for the monarchy. It may actually make a lot of people resent the monarchy and want to get rid of it. They feel that he will get too involved in certain places where he shouldn't get involved. He's too compromised in certain ways, therefore he will create lasting damage for the institution. But nobody really talks about William and what his impact might be, let alone his son George. We really don't know what's going to happen with them because, well, George is just a little kid, and Prince William's time has not yet arrived. Personally, I don't see how Queen Elizabeth being here makes the monarchy more popular than it already is, because first off, although I can understand why King Charles as a personality, with his history, especially in regards to Princess Diana and other things like that, I can see why some people would not like him as a king, or at least just as a person. But again, Prince Charles as a person and Prince Charles as a king technically might be two different things entirely. It might be that, yes, he's not the most likeable person, but if he does his job as a king correctly and people see that, well, they might look past his personality flaws and his history if he does a good job. Prince William seems to be very popular amongst people, especially the younger generation, especially his wife. She seems to be touching even people that I know who are practically Republican in nature. Even Prince Harry, before the Meghan Markle debacle, was giving the monarchy a lot of popularity just because of his personality alone. He was boisterous, a Jack the Lad. He felt like a normal person in many ways, and that's what lent them a lot of support, because the monarchy had stopped being this weird alien thing to most people, and they started to try to become more ordinary, but in a monarchical sense, of course. The younger members of the monarchy are much more open, much more down to earth than the older generation, and that's probably because, well, they are younger and they are trying to create a new way of being monarchs. So regardless of the political aspect of it, which could potentially cause issues with the monarchy and the institution's future, in terms of the people who make up the monarchy, it could be worse. In fact, I don't think even Queen Elizabeth herself is that big a factor in the survival of the monarchy. And that goes to most people, not just in this country, where it's never been higher, and also in the rest of the Commonwealth, where the Queen is still head of state. They overwhelmingly want the monarchy to stay, and I think even if Prince Charles becomes king, if again he does a good job as a king, I think people will warm to him in that regard, and they will remain the heads of state in these respective countries. And this leads to the question of loyalty and politics. The politics is complicated, and not only that, it does raise questions about the loyalty of her subjects to the monarchy. Do we, as British and Commonwealth subjects, should we keep our loyalty to her and the institution if they're starting to go against our own interests? Because think about it, what do we do when the monarch seems to be doing very little for us. Now, of course, constitutionally, things are quite complicated. The Queen only has certain powers that she can do in order to, affect politics in this country. She is meant to be neutral, although that doesn't mean that she has to be apolitical. She just can't be biased towards one faction, one party, or the other. There have been many kings and queens throughout our history as a constitutional monarchy that have used their powers for good and for bad, and of course no constitutional crises. The Queen hasn't really done anything, really. Not only has she failed to keep the country together politically, as we see, the country is falling apart with factionalism, political tribalism, and also these increasing nationalist movements in Scotland and Wales. We have seen our liberties be slowly but surely eroded over the past 60 years that she's been monarch, and I can't for the life of me remember any time she has actually said no to any of these laws, which she is legally allowed to do. Laws can only be truly passed if she signs off on them. She does have a veto. If the House of Lords allow these laws to be passed, she is our final line of defence, and she's pretty much been signing them off again and again and again and again. A lot of pro-monarchy people tell me that's probably to do with the strong arming of Parliament and the slow, gradual increase of their power over the past 300 years, but I'm not so sure. I do think that her personality, how she wants to rule, has been the main factor. She just doesn't want to get involved. I think she likes being a figurehead more than being actively involved like a lot of her predecessors were. I can't imagine her father, I can't imagine Queen Victoria, I can't imagine any of the others in the 19th and 20th centuries countenancing any of the terrible legislation that has been passed that is actively repressing their subjects. I just can't believe that they would allow that to pass. She has allowed these laws to pass, and that means that potentially the loyalty of her subjects are waning as a result, and that has to raise questions for us. Should we support an institution that isn't doing anything for us? They're not doing anything. They are the last line of defence, as I said before, and they're doing nothing to protect our rights. Every new monarch takes an oath. I can't remember the exact quote, but the oath essentially is, will you protect the people of this country, their rights, their values, their culture, the things that they hold sacred? Basically, the rule of law, the law of the land. She is meant to protect that. She's meant to protect our freedoms and our rights that we've had for many, many years. That actually predates her. This is an oath that has been going on since, I believe, the Anglo-Saxon times. So why hasn't she done it? That's a complicated question that nobody has the same answer to, but it's pretty clear to me that she has abandoned that oath, whether that be through manipulation by Parliament or by her own hand. Doesn't really matter. So should we, as British subjects, remain loyal not just to her, but to the institution, if, as it seems to me, their goals and vision seems to conflict with our own? So let's take a look at the politics of the monarchy and to see how this may affect people's loyalty. There's been a lot of stuff in the news recently in regards to the Queen and Prince Charles and Prince William's views on certain subjects. The Queen has come out in favour of, apparently, Black Lives Matter and environmentalism, the kind of environmentalism that Extinction Rebellion and all the globo homo type people believe in. And Prince Charles has, he's always been a tree hugger. He's always been in favour of the COP26 types, the net zero thing, etc., etc. We all know what that is. And to some extent, Prince William has also supported such things too. The Queen supporting critical race theory type stuff goes against what most of the country, be they white, black, Asian, whatever, are actively against. People don't like that. They disagree with it, quite strongly in fact. Moreover, the environmentalism that she, Charles, and to some extent William support is going to cost a lot of people in this country their jobs, especially those who work mainly in fossil fuel industries, oil, and in other places that would require fossil fuels like the power grid, etc., etc. If the monarchy uses their influence to make these net zero policies a reality, we could see a lot of harm being done to people like us. How can we as British subjects remain loyal to these people, this dynasty at the very least, if they're conflicting with us. And a lot of people in the NRX, but it's not just them, it's also people like Peter Hitchens, and to a lesser extent, even people on the centre-right, are beginning to question that. Of course, the left, to some extent, although there are a lot of monarchists who are left-wing in this country, Republicans aren't all left-wing. Now, if you're more of a reactionary type, you want to get rid of the entire institution, it seems to me, at least some of them, not all of them, and replace it with something else, whether that be an aristocracy, a republic, God knows what else, as long as it's not them who are posed, who are compromised, and who might lead the country down a dark path. If you're Peter Hitchens, you want the monarchy to remain, at least as an institution, but you'd want to replace the dynasty with a dynasty that is far more likely to protect Britain and the ancient rights that we have. And I'm sure on the left, it'll be something very similar. But that single question always remains, should we remain loyal? And that was a question, really, that ended up being the ultimate question being asked during the Civil War. In the Civil War, at first it just started between a conflict between Parliament and monarchy. But then it became a question of, well, what do we do? Do we kill the king? Because he, to Parliament at least, had failed in his duties to protect the British people and to uphold our ancient rights. And he obviously attacked to them and wronged Parliament. He went above his station, but to him, he thought that he was protecting the British people by trying to levy these taxes that he felt was his right because he had to fight a war to protect them, and he felt that Parliament was the one in wrong. In fact, most parliamentarians probably didn't expect to kill him in the end. They probably didn't even expect to put him on trial. Maybe they thought, well, the war's over, no taxes for you, or he would be exiled and be replaced by another person who is related to him. We've done this many, many times. We all swear an oath to each other, essentially, especially if you're in the army. You swear an oath of loyalty to the Queen and obviously to the country as a whole, not necessarily to Parliament. Well, I would say this, as somebody who is a Republican, although not a Republican activist, I'm not a Republican who wants to overthrow the monarchy because I don't see any point to it in this country because most people support it, and as long as they keep out of my life, which they do for the most part, I'm willing to tolerate them. Of course, in my own head, my own country would be something along the lines of Starship Troopers, but that's besides the point. I'm okay with them as long as they do their job. But I don't see them doing their job, as I've just mentioned throughout this entire video. I personally think that if the monarch is not doing their duty, or even Parliament as well, for that matter, if none of these people are doing their duty, we as the British people should not just suck it up and live with it and have this loyalty that is unwavering if it's actively harming us. If they are harming us, they should be removed and be replaced, whether or not that be by people in the dynasty that will actually protect us or with another group entirely, so be it. I do agree with a lot of people like Peter Hitchens and the NRX that our loyalty should not be 100% all the time, because without our consent, they can't rule. And I think our consent should be withdrawn if their rule starts to harm us. But if the Queen suddenly grows a backbone and starts rejecting a lot of this authoritarian legislation, then she might have my full support. But will the monarchy survive past Queen Elizabeth II? Personally, I think so. I think they will. As long as they rule in the right way, as long as they protect the British people, they're obviously seen as having our best interests at heart, they will survive for another 1,000 years. But whether or not it will be the same dynasty, I don't know. We might end up having another dynasty in the next 100, 200 years. We don't really know. But as long as they do their constitutional duty, as long as they uphold their oath to protect us, I can't see why people would not want them, personally. I don't really see the personalities of these monarchs really being that much of a factor. Yeah, it's more of a factor when they're not king or queen, but once they become king or queen, it has to change. They have to start doing things. And I think as long as they do the correct things, as long as they do what is best, then it should be fine. I don't think Prince Charles is going to end the monarchy because he's Prince Charles and he's going to be king. And I personally think that if Prince William becomes king and he does a pretty damn good job because he's very popular, then the monarchy should be fine for a couple of decades, if not 100 years, because Prince George is going to replace him, then he's going to have kids and they're going to replace him. And as long as they cultivate this popularity and loyalty through good deeds, they should be fine. Republicanism has never been that strong in this country, not since the 17th century, and even then, the Republic only came as a result of increased radicalisation on the part of Parliament, and not all parliamentarians were Republicans. As a result, once Oliver Cromwell died and his son decided he didn't want to replace him, the monarchy was restored. But can a republic work in this country? That's another video, but technically yes, I suppose it could. But anyway, I'm going too long with this video. I'm going to conclude very briefly. No, our loyalty is not a given. I think if the monarch is actively harming us, we should get rid. That doesn't mean necessarily we replace the entire institution with something else, but maybe replace the king or the queen with another one. If that is what most people want, so be it. I don't think the monarchy is going to die anytime soon. I think it will survive into the next century and beyond. I think the British people just love having it as some kind of tradition, even as we're losing a lot of our traditions. I think it'll be fine. It survived worse times than this. So anyway, until next time, it's been your boy, and I'll see you all later.